Hi guys! In today's lesson we're going to look at the huge topic of civilization, and I'm going to show you what words you need to know to help you with the reading, listening and writing test. So what is this topic all about? Well, there are readings about Easter Island and what happened to that civilization, the Incas and the lost city of Peru. Then there's the migration of Polynesians from the Pacific Islands. There's even a listening about a man who tried to recreate their voyages. Then there's the Sumerians and the people who invented writing. There's the Egyptians and the pyramids, of course, and how they were built. There's the Inuit and the effect of climate change on their lifestyle. And there's lots about indigenous tribes, for example, Aboriginal Australians and Maoris. What all of these seem to have in common is that we could learn something from their civilization. They teach us about our own civilization. For example, this one about Easter Island and the people who lived there. Look at the reading and you can see a pattern that a lot of these readings follow, and knowing this pattern or structure can really help you with things like matching headings. There's always an introduction with a background, but then there's a question and the text tries to answer that question. So there may be theories, for example, on Easter Island. Some people think they ruined their environment because by building these statues they had to cut down trees. So there's the issue of deforestation and land clearing. But another theory thinks that they actually protected their environment, that they were sustainable farmers and that the statues didn't actually need much wood. And so their theory is that the civilization was destroyed by disease, for example, by rats. The conclusion tries to tell us that we can learn from this civilization and what happened to it. So let's look at some of the vocabulary that you need to know for this topic. I do have it on my website, so you can check it out there. So a lot of the Polynesian stories are about them being explorers, adventurers, pioneers, colonizers, and they are inhabitants of islands, they are settlers, they are our ancestors, and we are their descendants. So a lot of their stories come from folklore, myths, and legends. All of these civilizations are ancient. Many of them lived in remote places, isolated, cut off, and these particular ones had sustainable farming. So it's an issue for us today because their lifestyle was quite fragile. So what happened? There was an ecological catastrophe which wrecked, ruined, destroyed the island, and their civilization collapsed. One of the theories was due to land clearing, deforestation, cutting down the trees became scarce. And you can see it here again with the Lapitas. These are also Polynesians living on an island, and look at the story again. The question is, we know something about them, we know they were explorers, but the question is really, where did they come from and how did they travel so far? The answer, well, there are theories, again, the trade winds, the geography of the islands, and even extreme weather patterns, again, relevant to us today. Conclusion is, we don't really know, we don't have the answers. The vocabulary, now you'll start seeing the patterns. So these two were adventurers, pioneers, but also mariners on the sea or seafarers and migrants. These words come up so often in these kind of texts. Far-flung, another synonym for remote and isolated. In this text, which is on my website, it's all about how they discovered more information in a burial ground. There were graves and a cemetery, and they excavated the cemetery, so there was a lot of digging, and they found out things about the Lapitas' lifestyle, their livestock, keyword, their animals, and they found information from human remains in this archaeological site. Moving on to the Egyptians, let's have a look at another very similar structure where they're asking the questions, how did they build the pyramids? This is on my website too. So there's a question what we think. We think that they were built by people, by slaves, but there's a theory that actually they used kites to lift the heavy stones. They have evidence for this. They tried an experiment. So there are pictures on the hieroglyphs. They tried an experiment and they know that the Egyptians were interested in flight. What's the conclusion? What can we learn from this information? Well, from the experiment, they realized that kites could be used in other places, for example, to build bridges in developing countries. Then there's a listening. This is a really interesting one, I think, because it brings it right up to date. It's talking about civilizations like the Inuit in North America and the effect of climate change on their lifestyles. So they're in the Arctic. This topic of the Arctic is important, of course. The ice is melting or shrinking. This is unprecedented. It's never happened before. And they believe it's a consequence of human activity. So all of this good vocab can be used in your writing and speaking. This listening talks about the knock-on effect. So what happens to their lifestyle when there's increased precipitation or rain, higher sea levels, and this is a direct threat to their way of life. So really useful vocabulary. Again, they are indigenous people, settlers, colonists. They used to live by exploiting mammals from the sea, but they are abandoning their nomadic lifestyle. Nomadic meaning moving around, and abandoning meaning they can no longer do it because of climate change. They don't have many opportunities for jobs, so the opportunities are scarce. This word we had about trees becoming scarce, meaning there are not many opportunities. And this is having an impact on their well-being, their health, their mental health, and also physical health, obesity, diabetes, and depression, for example. So what are we losing from them? Well, they can no longer pass on their wisdom and their knowledge, their ancestral wisdom, what they learnt from their ancestors. They cannot or are no longer passing on this knowledge to their descendants. And often in IELTS we find out this knowledge can be really useful to us in our modern life. Again, the same thing about the Aboriginal Australians. So we've read about how they make natural fires to stop mega fires and what we can learn from them. And the Sumerians, I believe, invented writing. That's a really, really difficult text. Try it, it's on my site. And here is Thor Heyerdahl again, who recreated the trip of the Polynesians. There's a listening about that. So much to do with civilization. And in terms of writing, you might get questions like this about should we follow the customs of other countries? What is the effect of globalization on cultures and different cultural identities? Is it a threat? And finally, the thought of losing skills that our ancestors passed down to us because of modernization and because of technology. Those are all questions that you need to think about, and you have lots of examples from these ones that I have shown you. So please make sure you subscribe. There are still lots more videos to come in this series. Let me know if you have any requests. Thank you for watching. I'm Fiona from IELTS Exam Training Courses and Members Academy. Bye-bye.